Thank you for tuning in to the best parenting show on the internet, Post Daily Dose.
It's the Post. It's the Post. It's the Post. The Post Daily Dose. It's the Post. It's the Post. It's the Post. The Post Daily Dose. It's the Post. It's the Post.
Hey, good evening, Facebook family. Welcome to another episode of Post Daily Dose with me, your trusted parenting advisor, faithful guide and servant on the healing journey. What's my name? Big Papa Brian+Post. I hope everyone has had a fantastic day. Made Tuesday terrific. Today was Terrific Tuesday. That's right. Tonight's episode, we are going to talk about why I love my mother. That's right. I was actually going to talk to you about assessing your child's emotional age, and then I thought, no, I think I'm going to talk to you about why I love my mother. Hi, Mom. And so let me go back long ways, 45-something years ago. I was adopted as an infant. I was 3 months old, and my mother and father, Bill and Opal Post, brought me into their life. And shortly thereafter, a year later, they brought my sister, adopted sister, into their life as well. And I always, as far back as I know, I was adopted. There was various stories. I remember Mom telling me, very silly stories. But I always knew, I always grew up with the understanding. And I feel like it was important. It was important to just my own emotional processing. But I think what was most important, and they didn't know any of my biological story. My dad always used to say that he felt like I had an uncle worked at a hotel, and that my last name may have been Knight. So actually, when my father passed away some 14 years ago now, but when my mom, and it was before I had an opportunity to be reunited with my biological mother and also my biological father, but when I went to go begin the initial search, that's what we went on. We went on the basis of that name, and it was actually quite accurate. It wasn't my actual last name, but there's a whole story behind it. And so more than the understanding growing up, that I was adopted, what has always been important and probably the single, I'm not going to say one, because there's been multiple things. There were multiple things that my parents did for me as an adopted child that I feel made all of the difference in my life. And the first one of those things is they were always consistent. So these are the most consistent people that I think I've ever met in my life. I mean, we very little, and also I had the good fortune of growing up in a very small town. So we did not move. We moved twice when I was growing up. We lived in a trailer house until I was 5, and then we moved into a house across town in the same small town at 5 until I graduated from high school. And the benefit, I think, probably for small town living is that most of my friends and family also had very consistent parents. So my parents were extremely consistent. I mean, every day looked a lot like the others. We didn't do a lot of, traveling here or there. We went to church consistently. We got up, had cereal, went to school. My sister and I usually walked ourselves to school and came back home, walked ourselves back home after school. And my parents came home from work. They both worked same time every day. They left at the same time every morning, and they came home at the same time every day. So it was very predictable. Rarely were there opportunities when I didn't know. One of my favorite memories about my dad is the sound of his truck pulling down the alley. I could hear it. And it still resonates. It's almost like I can still hear it. And then, for the longest time, I would meet him in the backyard. And he'd get out of that truck, and I was always so happy to see him. My dad was always kind of grumpy. He was a quiet man, but he'd be covered in this lime dust because he worked in a rock quarry. And I'd always be happy to see him. And when I was little, I would always want his lunchbox because he would always leave like little snacks from his lunchbox for me. And, I don't know why I would eat that stuff, but I did. And it was always predictable. And then Mom, same thing. She was, she would come home at the same time. And usually I would always go out and meet her. Sometimes my sister would go out and meet her. I think a lot of times I was just praying that she would be bringing home a pizza from Pizza Hut, special occasions. But that predictability made a huge difference in my life. See, one of the things adopted children, just like foster children, struggle with is their earliest imprints in life were based in unpredictability. I just talked to a mom, had a coaching exchange with a mom, and the transcending the parenting matrix has already began. I mean, we're already seeing breakthroughs, and I'm so excited about kicking that off this Friday. But I was just talking to a mom whose daughter, came from an orphanage at a short period of time. And it's interesting how easily we do this unwittingly. We don't acknowledge our children's early experiences because we don't know. And so when you have a child as a small child, you get 9 months in the womb, and then you have whatever period of time you may be in foster care. The child then goes to hopefully their forever home. And as forever as that home may be, that child still carries these imprints. And those imprints is the unpredictability, the unpredictable nature of their earliest experience. And that unpredictable experience, it's pre-verbal of that child not going from this familiar 9 months to this now unfamiliar. And never having that same familiarity again in their life until they, learn it in their new home. But that's at the bottom of their brainstem. That is wired in as one of their earliest, most core memories. And so the consistency that you create for your child, foster child, adopted child, is so important. For any child with a trauma history, the consistency you create, it's right along the lines with predictability. My parents were extremely predictable. It's like I can predict their responses now. But even as a kid, there were no surprises. There were never any surprises. Like there was never a, hey, everyone get in the car, we're going to go do this. That didn't happen in my home. It was usually some kind of conversation, some kind of plan, and it would take an hour or so for a transition to occur for us to go out of town for, a 20-minute drive to the Sonic in Carnegie, the next town over. So it was highly predictable. And so the consistency and the predictability, two amazing foundational principles. And I still greatly require those two things, even as an adult. I don't do very good with inconsistency, and unpredictability is really hard for me. And I'm sharing that with you as someone who's been living this material their entire lives and who's been teaching it for 20 years. It's still something that's a struggle. And I'm the kind of person who I'll travel across the country and maybe most likely won't even know where I'm going to stay because that is not that important to me. It's like I have a foundation. I have such a foundation of predictability, consistency, and security that I could travel across the country and not know where I'm going to stay until I get there, not rent a car until I get there, and then just expect that it's all going to line up, and it always lines up. But that's what that foundation of predictability and consistency gave me. It provided me a level, a resting state of regulation that allows me to go into stressful situations and be able to contend with them without being completely overwhelmed. And that, I know that that's a byproduct of the way I was raised. So the predictability and consistency is very important. But back to why I love my mom. My mother has always been a loving person. She has always been big-hearted. My parents took in my extended family members regularly. They struggled with my sister, but they never stopped loving her. I never, not one time, mind you, I had a lot of behavior issues as a kid. I put my parents in some really awkward situations because of some of my behaviors. But never one time did I ever not feel loved by them. And that is huge. That is huge. And not only that, and I won't say not only that, but that feeling of unconditional love, even though I got whippings, even though I got yelled at, even though I got grounded, even though I experienced all the stuff that I preach against now, I never didn't feel loved. Could my parents have done things different for me that would have shaped my brain differently? Of course, but had they done that, I might not even be right here with you tonight. I wouldn't have been had they done anything different. So I have no regrets, but I also know that there are things you can do with your children that'll build a stronger relationship and build an even stronger foundation for them. And my parents were old school. All they knew to do was whip and yell and all that kind of stuff. So there was no other, alternatives. I mean, there was no timeout. I mean, there was go to your room and close the door. Stay in your room. Don't leave the yard. There was all that kind of stuff, but there were no points and rewards and all that kind of stuff. So despite all of that, and despite my early imprints of abandonment and my early imprints of feeling rejected and insecure, I always felt the security of their love. Even when I suffered from night terrors as a kid, and I used to jump out of bed and run down the hallway. Oh my gosh, sometimes I know they'd have their door closed. I'd hit that freaking door so hard because I would swear someone was after me. And 9 times out of 10, well, maybe not 9, maybe 7 times out of 10, I could at least go around on my mom's side. And if I couldn't climb up in the bed, I could sit on the side of the bed till I felt a little bit better and then go back to my bed or end up in my sister's bed and sleep there for a while before I went back to my bedroom, because my bedroom was on the other side of the house. So it was a long ways. But that theme of unconditional love has always been in my life. And I'm so grateful for that. I'm so thankful. And I remember when I was reunited with my biological mother, and this is not until I was 37 years old, one of the first things I said to her is, look, I don't want anything. This is one of the first phone calls we had. I don't want anything. I've had a good life. I have no regrets. I'm thankful. And I still, to this day, will oftentimes just send her a text and say, I'm so grateful that you were the woman who carried me and placed me for adoption, because it was the best thing that could have ever happened in my life. And because I believe God made me to do what I do, and every experience I've had in my life has prepared me for this moment and the moments and the opportunities and the understanding to share with you guys the challenges that you have with your children and look at it differently based on my own life and my own experience. But my mom's always had a big heart. She's never once not been supportive, even when she wasn't happy with me. Even when I may have disappointed her about something or let her down, she's always been there. And it's always been unconditional. And it'll be unconditional my entire life. And it reminds me of when parents talk about honeymoon periods with children. I didn't realize this until I was an adult. I was in my late 20s. That we've always framed the honeymoon period with children as this magical time when, they how is it we say, so there's a magical time where everyone's getting along, and then the honeymoon period wears off and real life sets in, and that's when they show you their true colors. That's it. I don't buy into a lot of that. That's inside the parenting matrix kind of stuff. So I don't hang on to a lot of that stuff, but I'm familiar with it just because of years of repetition. So we have this belief system that, children come into our home and it's all good. And then after 2 weeks, their true colors start to set in. And I realized as an adult that that wasn't true. That in fact, in the way I realized it is because I would come and visit home. And as soon as I would get home, I would feel agitated. Like just bristly. I remember my mom would say, golly, you're grumpy today, or you woke up on the wrong side of the bed, or are you in a bad mood about it? Are you okay? And I wouldn't know why. I wouldn't know why I would feel that way. And so I started thinking about it, because that's, kind of how I got to being here and sharing this message, is by thinking about stuff and not just buying into what the Matrix says, because the Matrix just feeds you this bill of goods. And so I realized that this honeymoon period thing was a myth. Because what actually happens is when parents and children first get together, there's no risk. There's no threat. There's no risk of loss. There's no threat of loss. So they get along and they have fun and they laugh and they smile, and, it's like, it's all good. And so then after a couple of weeks, things start to change. Things start to get a little more tense. And I realized the reason that happens is because after a couple of weeks, you start to get more connected. See, we spend enough time with someone, we start to get connected cellularly. And as you get connected, the potential risk starts to set in. So then imagine a month in. Imagine you're a foster child who so far hasn't had a stable home. They haven't had their own room, or maybe they've been moved around for a few different places, 20 different places. And then you've been in this one place for a month, and all of a sudden you wake up one day and you're like, holy shit, what if this doesn't work out? And you're a parent who's been longing to have this child in your home, and you get this kid in your home and you're like, this is really good. And as soon as you say, this is really good, the very next thought that shows up is, what if something happens? What if something happens? I'm a little obsessive, OCD, about stuff like that. What if something happens and it doesn't work out? Well, guess what happens for the two of you? You both start to get more stressed. And as soon as you start to get more stressed from fear and worry, then you get more sensitive. And when you get more sensitive, you start to attract more threats. So things start to show up in your life that are now more threatening, because your brainstem starts to get more activated. So the more stress you get, the more your brainstem gets activated. The more your brainstem gets activated, the more your trauma triggers start to get stirred up. So you go from this honeymoon period now to this increasing level of anxiety. And it all depends on the experiences. But you go to this increasing level of anxiety, and that's where children start to misbehave. And that's where parents start to get more stressed out. And it's all because you both are more worried. You're both starting to be more afraid. you're both starting to fear that something bad's going to happen. And so what we then do is we start trying to change that, but we start trying to change the wrong thing. What we start trying to change is the behavior that's triggering us. And as we start trying to change the behavior that's triggering us, what we actually end up doing is we start ignoring the stress, and the way in which we're trying to change the behaviors actually starts to increase the stress. So I realized that the reason I would get agitated when I would finally come home as an adult is because I was now exposed to the only people in the world in my entire life that could make me feel the worst. Just by saying, I don't love you. Just by saying, we don't want to be your parents anymore. Just by saying, you don't have a home here anymore. You're not good enough for us. And I would get stressed. And I was an adult. And so I would get stressed. And I didn't know it. It was all unconscious. And see, my ability to recognize that helped me settle my brain. And when I started settling my brain, because I knew that was not ever going to happen. It was never going to happen that my parents were going to say that to me. It was just fear and insecurity. And so when I stopped allowing that fear to kick in, I started being able to relax. And when I started being able to relax, then I could actually be open and loving my parents back even more without worry. And then it just got better. Right? From there, it just got deeper. Because then there's no fear. Because by that point in time, my mom, she knew that I, was always going to be her son and always going to love her. And she went through her own anxiety when my biological mother, when I was reunited with my biological mother, she got worried. She still feels a little threatened. She still feels a little anxiety, even now to this day. And she has to settle herself down, and she does. She settles herself down, and she'll laugh it off. But she feels that insecurity too. And her recognizing it helps her to settle down and stay in relationship with me and give me the support that I need to be wherever I need to be. And the truth is, no one will ever replace my mom. My biological mom will always be my biological mom, and I'll always be thankful and I'll always love her because she made me possible. Same with my biological father. But my mom is my mom. She'll always be that person. And it's interesting because I feel like for an adopted child, when you get to that level of love, it's almost more intense than the love a biological child has for their parent. Because the love a biological child has for their parent, it's probably rarely ever questioned. But the love an adopted child experiences has to overcome that base and that core of insecurity, that base and that core of rejection and overwhelm. And some children are not ever able to get to that place. Some parents are not ever able to get to that place with their children where they can actually get through that core of overwhelm and insecurity. And that's sad to me. And my sister experienced that a lot. And my parents experienced that insecurity with her a lot. So, see, I was able to witness like this dichotomy of an experience where I trusted my parents' love and support. I trusted it fundamentally, unconditionally. It never wavered, has never wavered in my life. With my sister, it wasn't the same. She always questioned it. And they always struggled with her. And so I got to experience that dichotomy in relationship. Same parent, same home, two completely different experiences. And it's just interesting to me. And I use all that material from my life, from my struggles. I use all that material in my understanding of family dynamics and children and suffering and trauma today. And at the end of the day, no matter what I may go through, no matter what experiences I may have, I always know that my mother loves me. And my mother knows that I love her. And I want you to have that in your life. I want you to have that for yourself. See, that experience for me allows me to love myself. One of the last things I write when I write my goals each day, one of the final things I usually write is something to the effect of, I love you, Brian. I love you. Sometimes I'll look in the mirror, I'll look deep into my eyes, and I'll just say, I love you. You are a good person. And that foundation of love and support from my parents has birthed that within me. And it gives me a solace, it gives me a security, it gives me a knowing, it gives me a faith, it gives me a grace with myself when I'm not doing the things that I think I should be doing, or when I'm not where I feel like I should be, in a stage of life. It gives me that confidence. And it doesn't have to be arrogant. It's just a confidence that's just based in love. And that all comes from the foundation of my parents. And I want each and every one of you as parents, I want you to find that. I can't say I want you to have it. I do want you to have it. But more than that, I just want you to find that place of acceptance within yourself. Whatever. And I've done lots and lots of work on myself. I've done lots and lots of therapy work, confronting my own pains and insecurities and rejections and all of that in utero experience and birth canal stuff and pre-verbal stuff. Lots and lots and lots of that work, and pain growing up and challenges growing up. Done all kinds of that stuff. And all that is important. It's all critical because it gives me a deeper self-awareness of myself, of my challenges. And so I want to invite you guys to look at that. Look at that for yourself, because it is important to me that you love yourself, because you are a person, you are an individual. You are a part of God. You are a part of God, and you are love. You are love. I don't care what you've experienced. You, the very essence of you, is love. It's only experiences that have moved you into places of fear, and sometimes gotten you stuck there. But your essence, the core of who you are, is love. And I want you to know that. And I want you to be able to feel that within yourself. And then I want you to be able to share that with your children. My 60-second parenting on Instagram was about saying I love you to your kids. And sometimes, second time I've had a parent in the last 2 weeks say something about their child, always saying I love you to them. What does that mean? Well, children say I love you because, number one, it feels good. They've associated with a good word. Number two, when they say I love you, you usually say I love you back. And so they know it makes you feel good, and then you give them something good back. And then children will say I love you because they want to make sure you love them. So sometimes when a child says something to you, good or bad, it's really a fear of what the lack that's within them, the insecurity that's within them. So a child will say, I love you. And really what they're waiting to hear is that you love them. And then they feel good. Right? And so I want you to have that love for yourself. And then I want you to be able to extend that love to your child. Because no matter how challenging your child's behaviors are right now, they too are the very essence of love. Your children are the very manifestation of love. They are God's children. Therefore, they are the manifestation of love. And it's only the painful experiences that they've suffered by fearful adults, at the hands of fearful adults, that has caused them to be so stuck in fear and manifest so many challenging behaviors that it's stressful and overwhelming. But all we have to do to create healing for our children is start by loving ourselves and then get underneath their behavior and love them where their stress and their fear is at. And then the behaviors will go away. That's it. It's that simple. I love you. I love you, and I may not even personally know you. We may not ever have looked in one another's eyes. We may have not ever smiled at one another. We may not have ever touched, shaken hands, or shared the same space. But I love you because you are a part of me. You are a part of me. You are a reflection of me. Your struggles are a reflection of my struggles. My struggles are a reflection of your struggles. I am here because I have struggled. You are in my life because you struggle. Therefore, I struggle. You hurt, therefore I hurt. And we will heal together. We will not stay stuck. You will not stay stuck because I won't stay stuck. I am unwilling to stay stuck. And because I am unwilling to stay stuck, you are going to move with me. And we will move together. And because I know you're unwilling to stay stuck, or you wouldn't be here, we will move together. Big Papa loves you. I love you. God bless you. Go to sleep tonight. Wake up restored, refreshed, and re-energized. Because tomorrow is Wonderful Wednesday. Good night, guys.